peradilan hari ini yang kita tonton adalah peradilan sesat. Kita melihat, menyaksikan betapa keadilan yang selama ini kita perjuangkan selalu dicabik-cabik oleh para aparat hukum. Hidup keadilan! Hidup! Hidup Mbak Suci! Hidup! Hidup Suciwati! Hidup! Hidup Munir! Hidup!
Suciwati Munir is an Indonesian human rights activist and wife of Munir Said Talib, the country's most prominent human rights defender. In September 2004, Munir was set to travel to Holland to study for a master's degree in humanitarian law.
Saya dalam satu minggu ini mencoba menghindari orang membuat acara semacam farewell party begini. Karena menurut saya ini lama-lama saya pikir jadi beban nih kalau saya terus-terusan.
Munir began his rise to prominence in the early 1990s when he worked as a legal aid officer in East Java. One of his cases involved a union leader at a local factory who had been sacked after leading a strike over low wages. That union leader was Suciwati.
Kita karena upah kita rendah, terus kita kan maunya mogok.
Tertarik pada Munir itu karena lebih person ya, dia banyak hal yang tidak saya temukan di laki-laki lain, saya temukan di Munir. Dia seorang yang berani, seorang yang cerdas, seorang yang rendah hati, yang pasti dia punya komitmen terhadap pembelaan masyarakat yang tertindas. Itu yang penting bagi saya.
In 1998, Munir set up the organization Contras to fight for justice after the disappearance of pro-democracy activists in the wake of Suharto's fall from power. Contras continued uncovering state violence across the country, particularly that committed by Indonesia's powerful military. Munir's outspoken criticism of the military made him a guiding light for a nation in turmoil.
Mereka menembak rakyat, tapi kemudian bersembunyi di balik ketek kekuasaan. Apakah kita biarkan orang-orang pengecut itu tetap gagah? Tidak! Saya kira tidak. Mereka gagah untuk gagah. Mereka hanya ada di baju.
Munir's sense of responsibility to the future of his country led him to leave Indonesia to further his studies overseas.
Itu adalah salah satu dia untuk karena dia merasa selalu kurang, karena dia orang yang selalu haus dengan ilmu, dan dia mengambil jurusan pun itu jurusan hukum humaniter, akan dia peruntukkan untuk tentu saja untuk bangsa kami, bangsa Indonesia.
Kalau ke Belanda jangan minta saya nganter-nganter ke sana kemari. Saya mau ketemu cuma dengan buku dan perpustakaan. Balik pertarungan presiden Indonesia yang saya kira itu. Terima kasih.
On September the 7th, 2004, Munir boarded a Garuda Indonesia flight to Amsterdam via Singapore.
Saya pertama kali mendengarnya itu dari Usman Hamid. Ya, waktu itu dia menelpon ke rumah. Waktu itu saya ada di rumah, kemudian Usman melanjutkan, Mbak nggak dengar kalau Cak Munir meninggal.
I was called by my friends in Contras who received phone calls from Garuda explaining that Munir passed away in the plane. She cries, she cannot speak. It's difficult for her to express her feeling, and I know, I fully understand. So it's a great loss for us, a great loss for Indonesian human rights community. I don't know, maybe it's too difficult to find another Munir.
Munir's sudden death raised immediate suspicions. Suciwati and Usman Hamid started to investigate by conducting a series of interviews with Garuda's management. They discovered that an off-duty pilot named Polikarpus Prianto, who had made contact with Munir only days before the flight, had been on board the plane.
It's very suspicious because he is the one who was trying to call Munir just a couple of days before Munir's flight. So we start to have a conclusion there must be something wrong in the planes. Then, at the beginning of November, we heard from the Dutch newspaper that Munir was poisoned.
Ini menjadi sangat berat sekali ketika sudah mengarah pada orang-orang yang terlibat di sana.
Munir had long been an enemy of military leaders whose impunity he had constantly challenged.
Ditemukan oleh teman-teman TPF di mana ada 41 hubungan telepon antara Polikarpus dengan Mugdi. Mugdi ini adalah seorang Deputi 5 di Badan Intelijen Negara.
So it's clear that there is a link between the case of Munir, the murder of Munir, and the intelligence agency of Indonesia.
Dua minggu setelah dia meninggal, saya mendapat kiriman paket di mana di situ isinya kepala ayam dan kaki ayam, dan di situ ancaman berisi awas jangan libatkan TNI dalam kasus pembunuhan Munir dalam kasus ini, atau kamu akan bernasib sama seperti ini. Artinya seperti ayam itu kehilangan, itu terus, dan itu mereka melakukannya secara sistematis dengan bahasa yang sama.
The military's omnipresence in Indonesian society was not dissimilar to their role in other Southeast Asian countries at the time. In Thailand, under the leadership of Thaksin Shinawatra, the Thai military was involved in a crackdown against suspected insurgents in the Muslim-dominated south. On October the 25th, 2004, hundreds of demonstrators were summarily arrested in Tak Bai in southern Thailand. By the end of the day, 85 people had died, some from gunshot wounds and beatings, but most died from suffocation due to being piled on top of each other in the trucks used to transport them to an army camp. No one has ever been held responsible for these gruesome cases of extrajudicial killings. The Tak Bai incident is one of countless cases in which Muslim citizens in the south have been arrested and tortured. Well-known lawyer Somchai spent much of his time fighting for their right to due process and a fair trial. In 2004, Somchai was representing 5 young Muslim men who had been arrested and tortured. They were accused of stealing weapons from an army camp.
Apart from being a Muslim, he from the poor, from the farmer's family, and he cannot tolerate injustice. Somchai provide them the justice, give them the justice. So that's why they respect him a lot. Most of the case handled by Mr. Somchai, the accused got free finally.
ผมเสียดายตรงที่ว่าในขณะที่ประชาชนถูกทำร้ายถูกความไม่เป็นธรรมเกิดขึ้นเงียบสงัดอย่างที่ท่านมาจากภาคใต้ได้พูดถามว่าวันนี้ใครเป็นผู้ปกครองประชาชนเป็นที่พึ่งของประชาชนครับ
แน่นอนค่ะเขาดิฉันเชื่อว่าเขาถูกจ้องมองจากเจ้าหน้าที่รัฐมาโดยตลอดเนื่องจากว่างานที่เขาทำเนี่ยเป็นงานที่ว่าเขาต่อต้านเจ้าหน้าที่รัฐในการที่จับกลุ่มโดยไม่ชอบซ้อมทรมานผู้ต้องหาอะไรตรงนี้เพราะงั้นเนี่ย
Somchai always think about the safety of other people. His colleagues try to remind him about his own safety.
แต่เรื่องตรงนี้ยอมรับว่าคุณสมชายไม่เคยบอกดิฉันเลยเขาเพียงแต่เตือนลูกน้องเขานะคะและตัวเขาเองเขาก็ไม่เคยเล่าให้ฟังเลยว่าเขาเคยถูกคุกคามหรือไม่นะคะ
When he went to the south, he be more alert. He might not think that he would be kidnapped in Bangkok.
แต่ว่าในวันที่เกิดเหตุวันที่คุณสมชายหายไปเนี่ยคุณสมชายก็จะโทรศัพท์มาที่บ้านแล้วก็บอกว่าเขาไปทำพิธีละหมาดอยู่แล้วก็กำลังจะไปทานข้าวแล้วก็ถามว่าแล้วลูกๆทานข้าวกันหรือยังก็คงเป็นครั้งสุดท้ายที่เราติดต่อกันนะคะ
Witnesses later reported that they saw Somchai being pushed into a car in central Bangkok. That was the last time he was seen.
หลังจากทราบว่าคุณสมชายไม่อยู่นะคะดิฉัน3-4 วันแรกดิฉันแทบไม่ได้นอนเลยแล้วก็คิดอยู่ตลอดว่ามันเกิดอะไรขึ้นอะไรเงี้ยพยายามทบทวนพยายามคิดว่ามันจะเกิดอะไรขึ้นนะคะทุกคนก็สับสนนะคะแต่ว่าโชคดีที่ว่าช่วงนั้นเป็นช่วงที่เด็กๆปิดเทอมเขาก็เลยอยู่บ้านแล้วก็ไม่ต้องไปโรงเรียนมีเฉพาะคนโตคนเดียวที่ว่าต้องไปทำงานเขาก็เลยค่อนข้างที่จะอึดอัดเนื่องจากว่าเวลาออกไปที่ทำงานก็จะมีเดินผ่านร้านหนังสือพิมพ์ซึ่งมีเรื่องราวของพ่ออยู่ในหน้าหนึ่งของหนังสือพิมพ์ทุกฉบับก็ถือว่าเห็นใจเขาอย่างที่สุดนะคะ
ඉස්සෙල්ලා හිටියේ මහත්තයයි මායි දරුවෝ තුන්දෙනයි. ඒක ගොඩාක් ලොකු සතුටක්. අපි පවුලක් හැටියට ගොඩාක් සන්තෝෂෙන් ජීවත් වුණා. දැන් ඉතින් දෙමව්පියෝ ගාව ඉන්නේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ට මම කරදර කරන්න කැමති නැහැ. හැමදේම තනියම මගේ වැඩ මම්ම කරගන්න තමයි මම හැම වෙලාවෙම බලන්නේ.
In June 2002, Padma Perera's husband Gerard was arrested for murder.
පස්සේ මගේ සෑහෙන දුරක් යනකොට පස්සෙන් කෙනෙක් ඇවිල්ලා මම හිටපන් ජෙරාඩ් ඉන්න තැන ඔබ දන්නවා කියලා. ඊට පස්සේ කීප දෙනෙක්ම ඇදලා බලහත්කාරයෙන් මාව ඇදලා වාහනයට ඇතුළට දාගත්තා. ඒ වාහනේ ඇතුලේ හිටියා. එයා මට ඔළුවට තට්ටු කරලා කිව්වා මිනිහා වැඩ කරපු තැන නම්බරේ කියපන් කියලා. මම සෑහෙන දැන් මං කිව්වා ඇයි අපිට මෙහෙම කරදර කරන්න කියලා. උඹ නෙමෙයි ඔබේ මිනිහා තුන් දෙනෙක් මරලා තින්නේ කියලා. ඉතාලම අසභ්‍ය වචනෙන් බැන්නා. මේගොල්ලෝ පොලිසිය කියලා කියන්න බෑ. ඉතාලම අසභ්‍ය වචනෙන් තමයි බැන්නේ. ඉතින් ඊට පස්සේ මගේ මහත්තයා එළවලු මල්ලකුත් අරගෙන මම දැක්කා බස් එකෙන් බහිනවා.
මේ කිව්වා මේගොල්ලෝ ජීප් එකෙම ගිහිල්ලා පවුලයි බබාවයි බස්සලා ගෙවල් කිට්ටුව පස්සේ මාව අරගෙන ඇවිල්ලා ජයලින් ඒක මේ වැලි කරන්නේ ජයල පැත්තට ජීප් එක හරවලා මගේ වැණීම ගල්ලා ඒක අරගා ගත්තා. ඊට පස්සේ මාව එක්කන් ගිහලා මට ගහලා මේ යකඩ පොල්ලක් වගේ වලටත් ගහලා මේ කුඩු උස්සලා තිබ්බා මේ අත් දෙකත් එක මෙහෙම අදලා උඩක උස්සලා තියලා ලණු අරගෙන උඩක ගැට ගැහුවා. ඒත් මම මුකුත් කිව්වේ නැහැ. මම ඒගොල්ලෝ කිව්වේ මම මේ බව සම්බන්ධ නම් මට දෙන උපරිම දනුවම දෙන්න වෙන කාවත් එනම් අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ කියලා. ඊට පස්සේ මාව මේසයක් උඩ තියලා උඩක ගැට ගහලා මේ මේස ගත්තා. මේස ගහම එහෙම එල්ලි හිටියා. ඊට පස්සේ කොහොමද මම ආය මෙහෙම කර ඉන්නකොට අද මේ මැඹරලා මේ පිටිපස්ස මේ මට තේරුණා ගැලවිලා වගේ කිලින් වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ මම මේ මිටිය කවන්නේ පැය දෙකක් විතර.
අපි පොලිසියට ගියා වත්තල පොලිසියට. ඊට පස්සේ මහත්තයාව දෙන්නෙක් විතර අල්ලගෙන ආවා. එයාගේ ලොකු අයියයි තවත් එක්කෙනෙක් එක්ක. එයාගේ අත් දෙක කඩන් අරටලා තිබුණේ. හොඳට මිදිවිලා මූණ අත් මුළු ශරීරෙම හොඳට මිදිවිලා හිටියා. ඇස් දෙක හොඳටම රත් පාටලා. ඉතින් කතා කරන්න අපහසුතාවයෙන් තමයි මේ වෙලාවේ හිටියේ.
වෙනද කොහමද ලොකල් වයසී ළඟට මම අවස පහර විතර ගෙන්නුවා. එනලා කිව්වා අපිට වැරදීමක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඔයාව හෙට පොලිසියෙන් උසාවියෙන් අපදිලා යවනවා කියලා.
ඒ වෙලාවේ අපි ඉක්මනින්ම නවලෝක රෝහලට අරගෙන ගියා. අත් දෙක කැඩිච්ච තැලුණ ලෙහෙ මේ වහුගඩු වලට බැහැලා දෙනවා. මෙයාගේ ජෙරාඩ්ගේ ජීවිතේ අනාරක්ෂිතයි කියලා. ඊට ඉක්මනින් මෙයාව ඩයලිසිස් කරොත් බේර ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. එයා ලක්ෂ ගාණක් යනවා ඔයාට ඒක වියදම දරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා. මං කිව්වා මට ඇත්තටම එහෙම මුදලක් නැහැ. හිඟා කාලා හරි මගේ මහත්තයා බේර ගන්න ඕනනේ මහත්තයා බේරලා දෙන්න කියලා. ඉතා බැගෑපත් වුණා. ඒ වෙලාවේ එවෙලෙම මාගේ මහත්තයා දැඩි සත්කාරයට ඇතුළු කළා. ඊට පස්සේ ඩයලිසිස් කරන ගමන්ම මෙයාට සිහිය නැතුව ගියා.
The brutal treatment meted out to Gerard by the police officers at Watala police station is by no means an isolated incident in Sri Lanka.
The patient we examined today, he got blunt weapon injuries all over the body, starting from the upper limbs, the chest and abdomen, and the lower limbs. Basically, the blunt weapons are used by most of the law enforcement authorities. That is the teaching they got from their superiors.
But here you can see the indentation of the skin into the muscles due to the collection of fluid between the muscle and the skin. So all these are bad signs which have final impact on his renal function, kidney function.
In summer, I think Gerald got the same injuries the patient we examined today. Gerald's condition was very critical within 1 day. I think he was arrested on 3rd of June, and by 4th of June 2002 his condition was very critical. He was nearly approaching his death.
Padma came to me and told, "Sir, please do all the possible things to protect the life of the Gerald." First thing. The second thing, please start all the legal steps, legal actions against this illegal action. Actually, those days I worked with the Asian Human Rights Commission, and I worked to the Mr. Basil Fernando.
My colleague in the other end was a very determined young man. He was able to get information from his friends and the wife and was communicated to me over the telephone.
He promised me, "Sanjeeva, I'll do whatever necessary within this night. Please write down all the details to file a fundamental right application in the Supreme Court."
The next day, as Gerard's kidney function deteriorated, the hospital management decided to turn off his life support system.
Immediately again called to Basil Fernando. He wrote to the government of Sri Lanka and to the Special Rapporteur of Torture in the United Nations, and continuously all these people wrote to the government and to the management of the private hospital asking not to stop these life support systems.
ඉදලා මාසයක් වෙනකම් දැන් දවස් 19න් සිහිය ආවා. ඊට පස්සේ මාසයක් පමණ නවලෝකෙම හිටියා.
The police were so absolutely sure that they are going to win this case. But the whole court, without any hesitation, held that a very serious fundamental rights violation has taken place. It gave, up to that point, the biggest award the Supreme Court has given.
තවන්න ඒ කලා අත් දෙක කැඩලානේ තියෙන්නේ. සම්පූර්ණ අත් දෙක කොහොමටත් මොකුත් කරන්න බෑ. ටොයිලට් එකට ගිහිල්ලවත් එයාගේ වැඩ කටයුතු කරගන්න බෑ. මූණ හොදන්න බෑ. දත් ටික මැද ගන්න බෑ. කන්න බොන්න බෑ. ඒවා සේරම කරන්න ඕනේ මම. ඉතින් මාස 4ක් විතරනකම් අත් දෙක උස්සන්න බැරුව හිටියා.
හොඳ ප්‍රසිද්ධියක් තියෙනවා ඒක. ඇත්තටම මමත් දැනගත්තේ මේ සිද්ධිය මොකද මගේ යාළුවන්ගේ තමයි නැත්තම් මන් දන්නේ නැහැ Itu mada itu begini. Ini ada neta sedina. Jadi nadu polisi nggak tidak ada kena mana ikam. Jadi itu. Itu apa namanya?
A week after his disappearance, Somchai's car was found abandoned in a car park, not far from where he was last seen.
แต่วัตถุพยานที่ได้จากรถเนี่ยมีเส้นผมลายนิ้วมือแฝงตรงนี้เราต้องตั้งคำถามว่าทำไมจึงตรวจไม่พบอะไรเลยทั้งที่มีคนอื่นซึ่งขับรถของคุณสมชายออกไป
I've got involved in the case of Kun Somchai for 2 times. At the beginning of the case, I had a chance to look at the car, but at that time, it lost of the chain of custody. So we found the DNA on the steering wheel belonged to the police officer who drove the car from the office to the other office. It's not a good way. So if we need more evidence from the car, we cannot. And we cannot use in the court because of we loss of the chain of custody.
Though sloppy police work led to the destruction of evidence in the car, the investigation uncovered phone records of 5 police officers linking them to the same location Somchai visited on the day of his disappearance.
ก็เลยหลังจากที่ทราบว่าผู้ต้องหาคดีนี้เป็นตำรวจนะคะดิฉันก็พยายามที่จะร้องขอตลอดให้กรมสอบสวนคดีพิเศษรับคดีของคุณสมชายเป็นคดีพิเศษนะคะ
The 5 police officers were charged with coercion and gang robbery, and their trial began in August 2005. Murder or kidnapping charges could not legally be pursued since Somchai's body had not been found and no ransom demanded. This makes enforced disappearance a convenient tactic for authorities to silence critics. Due to the weakened evidence, only one of the 5 defendants was convicted of coercion and sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was later released on bail pending appeal.
และดิฉันก็ดีใจซึ่งแม้จะมีจำเลยเพียงแค่คนเดียวที่ได้รับการลงโทษเนี่ยแต่มันทำให้เกิดคำถามซึ่งสังคมต้องตอบว่าแล้วเมื่อมีการผลักคุณสมชายขึ้นรถแล้วจากผู้ต้องหาคนนี้เนี่ยแล้วคุณสมชายจากนั้นหายไปไหนมันทำให้ดิฉันสามารถที่จะตั้งคำถามต่อแล้วก็ทำงานต่อได้ค่ะ
Angkhana's persistent efforts to find out what happened to her husband were bringing her increasing international recognition. In May 2006, she travelled with her daughter to South Korea to accept the Gwangju Prize for Human Rights.
รางวัลนี้เนี่ยเป็นครั้งแรกนะคะที่ดิฉันได้รับซึ่งเป็นรางวัลซึ่งเป็นสากลนะคะดิฉันยอมรับว่าแรกๆเลยเนี่ยดิฉันก็ค่อนข้างที่จะสับสนนะคะแล้วก็ไม่มั่นใจเพราะว่าหลายๆคนโดยเฉพาะคนที่อยู่ใกล้ชิดเนี่ยก็จะพูดอยู่เสมอว่าดิฉันจะได้อะไรในการที่จะออกมาเรียกร้องสิทธิดิฉันไม่กลัวเหรอดิฉันไม่ได้อยู่คนเดียวแต่ดิฉันต้องรับผิดชอบลูกอีก5 คนแล้วสุดท้ายไม่ว่าจะอย่างไรเนี่ยสุดท้ายดิฉันก็จะไม่ได้อะไรเลยคุณสมชายทำงานเพื่อคนอื่นมาโดยตลอดถ้าแม้แต่คนในครอบครัวเองยังไม่สามารถที่จะออกมาทวงถามความเป็นธรรมให้คุณสมชายได้เนี่ยดิฉันว่ามันก็คงเป็นเรื่องซึ่งน่าเศร้าใจนะคะ
Human rights violation is very widespread because the impunity remains rampant in our region. This is the time for us to join our effort to fight for the rights of our people, even we have only 2 empty hands.
The DSI investigation up to that point had been compromised due to the fact that the Director General was himself a police officer and associated with the suspects in Somchai's case. Luckily for Angkhana, when Thaksin was ousted from power in a military coup, the DSI was also restructured.
คือในตอนต้นก็ต้องยอมรับในเรื่องของความคืบหน้าในส่วนต้นนะครับว่าจากที่ผมลงมาดูเนี่ยมันก็ไม่ได้มีการทำอะไรไปมากมายนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นในช่วงจังหวะที่ตัวชุดสอบสวนคนหนึ่งซึ่งเขารับผิดพ ราะว่าเขาเป็นหัวหน้าฝ่ายสอบที่เป็นตำรวจเพราะฉะนั้นพอผมเข้ามาเนี่ย
DSI tried to investigate for the second time and I've got involved in the case for the second time. But at this time, no coordination or cooperation between the DSI and our departments. They try to investigate by themselves. Even we are under the Ministry of Justice until the last year when the DSI want to find some evidence in the river. So they call our team after they told the media. So from that time, I thought that the DSI might not want evidence, just only to do something in front of the media.
Despite extensive searching, 2 years after Somchai's disappearance, none of his remains had been found. This was a key stumbling block to the progress of the case.
เพราะฉะนั้นเราจะทำได้เราจะฟ้องคดีนี้ได้เนี่ยนั่นหมายความว่าเราต้องมีหลักฐานชัดเจนว่าคุณสมชายเสียชีวิตนะครับเราถึงจะตั้งข้อหาในเรื่องของฆ่าคนตายได้นะครับ
In August 2005, Polikarpus's trial for murder began in a district court in Jakarta. While Polikarpus was the only defendant at this trial, questions were raised about the close contact he appeared to have had with Mukdi, Deputy Chief of National Security Agency BIN, due to the many telephone calls between them around the time of Munir's death. Polikarpus denied the calls ever having taken place.
Tapi apa tadi yang disebutin oleh jaksa itu nomor Anda?
Saya lupa, kayaknya nggak pernah pakai telepon itu.
0815 itu.
Handphone saya bukan itu.
Bukan. Nomornya bukan nomor itu. Tapi dari printout di itu
rumah iya, tapi rumah itu bukan atas nama saya. Saya kan baru pindah, baru beli saya.
Tapi dari dari tanggal yang ada kan sudah ditempati sama Polikarpus.
Iya, tapi waktu itu saya lagi ke makam orang tua saya, tanggal-tanggal itu.
Berarti kan ada yang mengangkat dan ada proses pembicaraan yang cukup lama.
Saya juga nggak tahu.
Bahwasanya kalau mereka memang tidak saling kenal, kenapa ada hubungan telepon itu? Harus ada penjelasan. Kalau memang ada, dia bilang bahwasanya, Mukdi bilang bahwasanya handphonenya dipakai oleh istrinya, supirnya atau ajudannya. Bagi saya itu penjelasan yang tidak masuk akal. Dia harus tahu jabatannya itu apa. Dia jabatannya seorang deputi 5. Apakah dengan mudahnya handphone itu dipinjam-pinjamkan? Bagi saya luar biasa.
Polikarpus was found guilty of murder by the district court in December 2005 and sentenced to 14 years in prison. He appealed, but the High Court upheld the guilty verdict. A second appeal was submitted to the Supreme Court, which overturned the verdict in October 2006 due to lack of evidence. Polikarpus was a free man. Only one of the panel of 3 judges, Judge Artijo, objected to the acquittal.
I think the trial in district court, I think it's fairly, but unfortunately in Supreme Court, alone I make a decision to media opinion, because my reason that there must be someone that's give poisonous for Munir food. Unfortunately, my colleague is not make a decision same with me.
Ketika keputusan MA itu, saya tidak hanya sekedar kehilangan seorang Munir, seorang suami, tapi saya kehilangan keadilan itu sendiri. Jadi bagi saya luar biasa.
She really want to know what happened, why my husband was killed, why no perpetrators to be punished. So many times I went with her to meet the Attorney General, to meet the Ministry of Justice, to meet the Chief Police, to meet the Chief of Justice. But all the high officials in Indonesia not successful in resolving the case. So I think she's really shocked. Yeah, sometimes she told me that, do you think it's better for me to go back to Malang, to East Java, back to ordinary life, and then take care of children? And blah, blah. No, I think I need you. I mean, I cannot imagine without you doing this all works and this struggles. This is a very long way to go. And Munir belongs to all of us, so we have to continue together.
Having already won the fundamental rights case, Gerard was then called as chief witness in the criminal case against the police officers who tortured him. The case was due to start in the High Court of Negombo on December the 2nd, 2004.
The police officers now get frightened. They may go to jail, they may lose their jobs. And you know, in Sri Lanka, job of a police officer is much more valuable than the salary they get. They make a lot of money.
ඊට පස්සේ හවස මන්ත්‍රී කෙනෙක් ඩිලුක්ෂ කීප දෙනෙක් එක්ක අපේ ගෙදර ඇවිල්ලා මහත්තයාට කිව්වා මේ නඩුව ඉල්ලාස් කරගන්න කියලා. එයාට කිව්වා ලක්ෂ 3ක් දෙන්නම් මේක ඉල්ලාස් කරගනි කියලා හැම කතා කළා. මහත්තයා කිව්වා මේක මානවිකම් එකේ නඩුව මට ඒගොල්ලන්ව පාවලා දෙන්න බෑ මට මෙච්චර උදව් උපකාර කරපු අය. ඒගොල්ලන්ගෙන් අහලා ඉන්න. ඊට පස්සේ මම ඒකට කැමති. ඒගොල්ලන් කැමති නම් මමත් කැමතියි.
Here is innocent worker. He has no defense. He lives in a humble house. He has to travel openly all the time. And there are the police officers. They have their vehicles. They have all the protection.
දාමේ කොමාරි මට පණිවිඩයක් ලැබුණා. ටීවිල් එකක ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වා චමින් දෙන අය ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වා කාන්තියක්ගේ ජෙරාට් වෙඩි තියලා බස් එක යනකොට මා බෝලේ හන්දේවි කියලා. මගේ මහත්තයට වෙඩි තිබ්බ දවසේම තමයි කිව්වේ. මට කිව්වා පොලිසිය ගාවන්නවත් එපා. ඒගොල්ලෝ එහෙම කරන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. ඒක තමයි මට ලොකුම සැකය. අනිත් එක අපිට පොලිසියෙන් ඔය අපරාධ වෙන්න ඇරෙන්න කිසිම කෙනෙක් මේක දේ කරන්නේ නැහැ කියලා මට හොඳටම විශ්වාසයි. අපිට තරහකාරයෝ නැහැ කිසිම කෙනෙක්.
They have killed the only man who saw torture. That is Gerald himself. So having killed him, they have erased the evidence.
I think Gerard would have been protected if he has not gone for that case. Now, if we are to protect other victims, how are we going to protect them, or what kind of protection are we going to give them? Now, even the victim we examine today, he will also eventually come to Gerald's situation, because definitely he will go for a Supreme Court case, and the police officers will be charged. The same thing can be repeated. What has happened to Gerald can repeat here as well.
A proper criminal investigation will create a lot of problems for people who abuse power. If they want to be corrupt, you don't want a good police to investigate corruption. So if you don't want corruption to be investigated, you cannot also investigate murder properly. So the whole abuse system exists for the benefit of all those who rule. That is the heart of the issue of torture.
In October 2006, Angkhana travelled to Sri Lanka to share her experience with an organisation for families of victims of enforced disappearance.
การหายไปของบุคคลเนี่ยสร้างความสะเทือนใจให้กับคนเราได้มากทีเดียวเนื่องจากว่าเราไม่รู้ว่าคนที่เรารักเนี่ยยังมีชีวิตอยู่ไหมอยู่ในสภาพอย่างไรนะคะหลายๆคนพูดนะคะว่าถ้าหากว่าเสียชีวิตแล้วเนี่ยก็ขอให้มีโอกาสได้รู้ก็ขอให้มีโอกาสได้พบศพนะคะเพื่อที่จะได้มาทำบุญตามประเพณีแต่ว่าความไม่รู้เนี่ยมันสร้างความทุกข์ทรมานทางใจ
In Sri Lanka, about 30,000 people disappeared. Hardly any case succeeded in getting any kind of justice.
Many of these mothers in Sri Lanka have been waiting for justice for 2 decades. Their sons and husbands were arrested by law enforcement officers and never seen again. What started as a convenient method of dealing with political opposition, enforced disappearance soon became the modus operandi for authorities and civilians alike to deal with all manner of disputes.
วันนี้ดิฉันได้ก่อตั้งคณะทำงานขึ้นมาคณะหนึ่งนะคะคือคณะทำงานยุติธรรมเพื่อสันติภาพเพื่อที่จะให้ประชาชนทุกคนได้เข้าสู่กระบวนการยุติธรรมเราไม่ได้ทำเพื่อตัวเองแต่เราต้องทำเพื่ออีกหลายๆคนที่มีชีวิตอยู่และอย่างน้อยที่สุดเราก็ยังยืนหยัดที่จะทำเพื่อคนที่ไม่มีโอกาสที่จะลุกขึ้นมาหาความเป็นธรรมได้ด้วยตัวเองค่ะขอบคุณ
The post-Thaksin government embarked on an ambitious plan to amend the Thai constitution. Angkhana, now a well-known figure in her country, was, to her surprise, selected to be part of the constitution writing committee.
ดิฉันก็ไม่ทราบเหมือนกันนะคะว่าดิฉันถูกเลือกขึ้นมาอยู่ตรงนี้ได้ยังไงนะคะแล้วก็ดิฉันเองก็เป็นหนึ่งใน 2,000 คนที่ถูกเข้ามาแล้วก็จุดประสงค์เดิมจริงๆของดิฉันก็คือเพื่อที่จะเข้ามาเพื่อที่จะเลือกคนดีๆได้เข้ามาทำงานนะคะแต่ว่าดิฉันเองก็กลับเป็นผู้ถูกเลือกเข้ามาแล้วหลังจากนั้นดิฉันก็ถูกเลือกเข้ามาเรื่อยๆจนถ้ามาอยู่ในหนึ่งใน35 คนของกรรมาธิการร่างรัฐธรรมนูญนะคะบางทีเราพูดว่าเราอยากให้กฎหมายเข้าไปแก้ไขปัญหาแต่ในชุมชน3 จังหวัดภาคใต้เนี่ยมีพรก.ฉุกเฉินอยู่มีกฎอัยการศึกอยู่ตรงนี้เนี่ยกฎหมายรัฐธรรมนูญเชื่อว่าเข้าไม่ถึงนะคะประชาชนเองก็ไม่รู้จะยังไงเพราะว่าจะฟ้องร้องตามกติกาสากลในสิทธิพลเมืองสิทธิทางการเมืองก็ยังทำไม่ได้นะคะที่ทำให้มันมีเนื้อที่อย่างน้อยที่สุด1 ที่นะคะสำหรับประชาชนธรรมดาที่จะเข้ามาอยู่ตรงนี้ได้นะคะก็ดิฉันเองก็รู้สึกว่าดีใจที่เข้ามาอยู่ตรงนี้ได้
Ada pesan yang jelas di sini atas pembunuhan Munir itu adalah ancaman bagi para human rights defender. Siapapun yang kritis, siapapun yang memang kerja untuk kemanusiaan, dia akan diperlakukan seperti Munir. Ini ancaman yang tidak main-main. Jadi pesannya adalah ketakutan yang luar biasa buat para human rights defender. Karena human rights defender orang-orang yang harusnya orang-orang yang selalu berdiri di depan untuk berbicara tentang human rights, tentang hak asasi, artinya mereka lah ya orang-orang yang harus dilindungi segala aktivitasnya. Bukan kemudian kalau di negeri saya ini mereka dianggap sebagai musuh gitu, bukan sebagai teman, apalagi kemudian untuk diberikan perlindungan, nothing.
Suciwati's fight paid off once again. Despite having reached the highest court after 2 appeals, Polycarpus's case was reopened in the Supreme Court, and in January 2008 he was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murder of Munir. Suciwati had scored a huge victory, but the fight was far from over. The masterminds were still at large, protected by the shroud of Indonesian military impunity.
What happened in the criminal case of torture? After 6 or 7 years, the court issued a verdict. Now, what is the verdict? The court did not draw the normal conclusion that it should have drawn, that it is their burden to explain this. It is the police who must explain their innocence, because already the fact that they have arrested him, they have brought him to the police station, and that torture took place inside the police station has been proved. Who did it? It is their burden. Now the court acquitted the accused.
The 6 officers accused in Gerard's torture case were acquitted in April 2008. Meanwhile, the murder case was ongoing, leaving Padma at risk living unprotected in the countryside.
Polisi ayam මොන රැකවන්න පොලිසියගෙන්නේ පොලිසියම මේ අපරාධය කළේ. ඉතින් ඒකට ඒ කියන්නේ ඉදිරියේදී තව නඩු තියෙනවා. සාක්ෂි දීමට නියමිතව තිබිච්ච නඩු තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා ඒගොල්ලෝ මොනවා කරයිද කියලා මට ඇත්තටම ස්ථිර වශයෙන් විශ්වාස කරන්න බැරි තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා. මොන හරි වුණොත් මේ අහිංසක දරුවෝ අනාථ වෙන නිසා. ජෙරාඩ්ගේ පින්තූරය ලොකු පින්තූරයක් තියෙනවා. ඒක මම ගොඩක්ම අල්මාරියේ හංගලා තියෙන්නේ. මොකද පුතා අරගෙන කතා කරනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ දෙවෙනි එක්කෙනා අරගෙන කියනවා ඇයි තාත්තේ ඉන්නේ නැත්තේ? ඇයි අපි එපා වෙලාද? මම දඟලන්නේ නැහැ. මං කෑ ගහන්නේ නැහැ. එන්න තාත්තේ කියලා කතා කරනවා පින්තූරෙට. ඒ වගේම චූටි එක්කෙනාත් ගත්ත ගමන් හරහර මේ තාත්තා කිය ඉම්පෙනවා. මල් ගෙනත් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ දේවල් කරනවා. දුව ඉස්කෝලේ හැම මේ පින්තූරය දැක්කොත් අහක බලා ගන්නවා. අහක බලන බෑග් එක අහක බලාගෙන තියලා තමයි එතන ඒ පින්තූර පැත්තටත් යන්නේ නෑ දුව. එයාට ගොඩක් දරා ගන්න බැරි තරම් දුක. චූටි කාලේ ඉතාලම අමාරුයි යාව වැඩට යන්න යව දාලා. එයා සමහර වෙලාවට පුතේ මම ඉන්නවා කියලා ඇත්තටම හොරෙන් යන්නේ. ජනෙල් වලින් පැනලා සමහරලාට ඒ වගේ අපි කුලියට කාලයක් හිටියානේ. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ මිනි අපේ මහත්තයා මරපු අය. මම කියනවා ජෙරාඩ් එක්ක තරහක් තිබුණා නම් ඇයි එයාව තනියම මරලා දැම්මේ? ඔයාලට තිබුණා ඔයාලට ගොඩාක් ඉවස ගන්න බැරි තරහක් තිබුණා නම් අපි සියලු දෙනාම එකට මරලා දාන්න. ඒක තමයි කියන්න තියෙන්නේ. ඇයි අපිව තනි කළේ? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි කොච්චර නැගිටින්න උත්සාහ කරනවා අපි එහෙම පොඩි දරුවෝ පව්. නමුත් මේක වේදනාවක් නේ ඉතුරු කරලා ගියේ. ඒක තමයි මූලිකවම හිතෙන්නේ.
Due to continued pressure, Bin Deputy Chief Mukti was finally brought to trial, charged with conspiracy to hire Polycarpus to kill Munir. On New Year's Eve 2008, the verdict is about to be announced.
Mau dia penjahat, mau dia pejabat, semuanya kalau bersalah harus dihukum.
Konspirasi dan penggoliman dan fitnah terhadap diri saya. Dan perlu Anda ketahui, fitnah adalah lebih kejam daripada pembunuhan.
Yang pasti harapannya ya kita berharap keadilan itu segera datang dan yang pasti yang salah dihukum setimpal ya. Dan kalau kita melihat hari ini Mukti didakwa sebagai penggerak, jadi yang digerakkan saja sudah dihukum 20 tahun, saya pikir ya harusnya lebih dari itu.
Tolong dengarkan dulu, apabila bapak-bapak ibu kalian nggak tertib, maka persidangan ini bisa dibatalkan.
Pertama, apakah benar terdakwa membagi tugas atau peran dengan menempatkan saksi Polycarpus sebagai efficient security dan memberi tugas untuk mengkonsep surat rekomendasi? Kedua, apakah benar peranan terdakwa memberi uang atau biaya kepada Polycarpus untuk menunjang lancarnya kegiatan operasional? Ketiga, apakah benar ada kesepakatan berkaitan dengan peran masing-masing saksi Polycarpus melakukan monitoring terhadap korban? Majelis telah mempertimbangkan pada pertimbangan hukum terhadap dakwaan pertama, karenanya pertimbangan hukum tersebut diambil alih.
Terdakwa silakan berdiri sikap sempurna. Mengadili, menyatakan terdakwa Haji Mukti Puro Pranyono tidak terbukti secara sah dan meyakinkan bersalah melakukan tindak pidana dari
ะว่าวันพุธที่แล้วที่ไปก็คือเป็นครั้งแรกจริงๆนะคะฉันเองก็ยังไม่ค่อยกล้าที่จะไปถึงบริเวณนั้นนะคะแต่ว่าวันที่ไปเมื่อวันพุธที่แล้วก็คือดิฉันมีเพื่อนๆไปด้วยแล้วก็รู้สึกว่ามันทำให้ดิฉันกล้าขึ้นที่จะไปในสถานที่นั้นในวันที่เกิดเหตุสถานที่ที่เกิดเหตุนะคะแล้วก็ในช่วงเวลาเดียวกับที่เกิดเหตุได้นะคะสิ่งที่รู้สึกได้ก็คือสถานที่นั้นในเวลาใกล้เคียงกันเนี่ยการจราจรติดขัดแล้วก็คนเดินมากมายนะคะแล้วก็อยู่ติดกับร้านอาหารซึ่งมีคนอยู่มากมายเนี่ยดิฉันก็มีความรู้สึกว่าแล้วทำไมการที่มีใครสักคนจะเอาใครบางคนขึ้นรถไปโดยที่ไม่มีใครสักคนที่จะเข้ามาช่วยเหลือเนี่ยดิฉันก็สะเทือนใจกับภาพที่เห็นนะคะ
In August 2008, Angkhana receives the news that the one police officer who was convicted in relation to Somchai's disappearance has been killed in a landslide in the north of Thailand. No body was recovered. Angkhana suspects that his death was faked to escape further charges.
If you ask me who are the best philosophers, it is these surviving victims. It is these humble people who have seen the depth of what is happening in their societies. It is in the bitterness of their tears. It is in the depth of their suffering. You have the truth of our societies.
ดิฉันไม่มีความหวังว่าเขายังมีชีวิตอยู่นะคะวันนี้ที่หวังก็คือเพื่อที่จะได้อะไรสักอย่างที่บ่งบอกความเป็นตัวตนของเขานะคะไม่ว่าจะเป็นเศษขี้เถ้าหรือไม่ว่าจะเป็นกระดูกชิ้นเล็กๆอะไรอย่างเงี้ยถือว่ามันมีค่ามากสำหรับดิฉันและครอบครัวลูกๆเนี่ยมีความสำคัญมากเลยนะคะดิฉันเชื่อว่าถ้าเมื่อไหร่ก็ตามที่ลูกๆซึ่งดิฉันเองก็ยังเคยคิดกับตัวเองนะคะว่าถ้าวันหนึ่งลูกๆบอกว่าเขาทนไม่ได้แล้วกับสภาพอย่างนี้เมื่อนั้นดิฉันก็อาจจะต้องหยุดเพื่อที่จะคิดทบทวนแล้วก็พิจารณาอีกที่ว่าดิฉันจะทำยังไงกับเรื่องราวเหล่านี้ต่อไปค่ะดิฉันเองไม่เคยคิดว่าตัวเองจะพัฒนาแล้วก็สามารถที่จะก้าวไปได้มาถึงจนจุดนี้ในวันนี้นะคะจากคนที่เป็นแม่บ้านธรรมดาเมื่อไม่กี่เดือนที่ผ่านมาดิฉันยังต้องไปตักพบท่านผู้หลักผู้ใหญ่ตามหน้าห้องน้ำบ้างตามทางเดินที่ท่านจะผ่านบ้างเพื่อที่จะยื่นหนังสือขอความเป็นธรรมแต่วันนี้เนี่ยดิฉันมีโอกาสที่ได้นั่งรับทานอาหารร่วมกับท่านได้พูดคุยนะคะได้ทราบถึงวิธีคิดวิธีการทำงานและนำเสนอในสิ่งซึ่งดิฉันแล้วก็ประชาชนส่วนใหญ่คิดนะคะดิฉันก็เชื่อว่าในวันหนึ่งข้างหน้ากระบวนการยุติธรรมจะเปลี่ยนและทุกคนจะอยู่ใต้กฎหมายเดียวกันและนั่นก็คือสิ่งซึ่งดิฉันพยายามต่อสู้มาโดยตลอดนะคะ
Meanwhile, the murder case goes on, and for various reasons, it is delayed. Why much of justice cannot happen in Sri Lanka is the delays. One judge begins to hear the case, then after 2-3 years, he is transferred. So, by the time the case is heard, there are 3-4 judges. Out of the cumulative effect of all these delays is intimidation of witnesses, people losing memory. Someday they say that someone wore a red shirt. 5 years later they may say, I don't remember it was red or white. Then they say, there's a big error. This makes a mockery of justice.
උසාවිය කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම ඉතාම ඉක්මනින් නඩු අසන්න ඕනේ. මේ වගේ නඩු කල්දදා යන්නේ නැතු ඉක්මනින් අහන්න ඕනේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ට වෙච්ච දෙයක් කියලා හිතාගෙන තමයි අනුන්ගේ දුකත් බලන්න ඕනේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ පහසුව නෙමෙයි අර අහිංසක මිනිස්සුන්ගේ පහසුව තමයි බලන්න හැම වෙලාවෙම. මොකද ඒ ජීවිතවල අවදානම කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ කාර්යක්ෂමතාවය තිබුණා නම් මෙහෙම වෙන්නේ නැහැ. පොලිසිය මගේ සැමියාගෙන් වචනයක්වත් අහන්න නැතුවනේ ගෙනිච්ච ගමන් එල්ලුවේ. වද දිලා අන්තිමට සෝරි කියලා ගෙදර එනවා. මරුණත් ඉතින් සෝරි කියලා අන්තිමට කියයි.
2 defendants have been charged with murder. Sub-Inspector Suresh, an officer at Watala police station where Gerard was tortured, and Ajit, a small-time criminal whom Suresh assigned to carry out the shooting on the bus. Ironically, the hired assassin had in the past also been one of Suresh's torture victims.
So Gerald's case still goes on. In the past, they have said justice delayed is justice denied. But you know, justice delayed to the extent that is happening in Sri Lanka is justice made into a joke.
මගේ දරුවන්ට හොඳ අනාගතයක් ලබා දෙනවා. වෛරය ක්‍රෝධය ඒවා සේරම නැති කරලා හොඳ තත්ත්වයක් මේ දරුවන්ට උදා කරනවායි කියලා. දැන් ඇත්තටම ඉතාමත්ම හොඳ කරුණාවන්ත නිලධාරීන් ඉන්නේ මානහිමිකම් එකේ. දැන් මට නඩුවට යන්න එන්න වුණත් දැන් සංජී මහත්තයා වුණත් දැන් කතා කරනකොට ගොඩක් ආසයි හිතෙනවා. පොලිසිය එක්ක එහෙම බලනකොට ඒ නිලධාරීන්ගේ කිසිම කරුණාවන්තකමක් මිනිස්සුගේ දුකක් වේදනාවක් තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඇත්තටම ගොඩක් සන්තෝෂයි එවැනි සංවිධානය තියෙන ගැන ඉදිරියේදී බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඉතින් රැකියාව කරන්න මානහිකම් සම්බන්ධ එකතු වෙලා.
Yang pasti shock ya, dan ini hal yang lagi-lagi hal yang menyakitkan yang harus saya terima. Tapi ini bukan hal baru ya buat saya.
Kita mendapatkan pelajaran kalau melakukan kejahatan, jangan melakukan kejahatan yang kecil, lakukan saja pembunuhan.
Peradilan hari ini yang kita tonton adalah peradilan sesat. Kita melihat, menyaksikan betapa keadilan yang selama ini kita perjuangkan selalu dicabik-cabik oleh para aparat hukum. Hidup keadilan! Hidup Pak Suci! Hidup Suciwati! Hidup Munir! Iya, saya seorang manusia biasa. Saya seorang ibu, saya seorang wanita. Ya, saya capek, tapi saya tidak akan pernah menyerah. Menarik diri dulu dari kegiatan yang ya artinya saya akan mencoba beristirahat untuk kemudian kita mengumpulkan energi untuk kembali lagi untuk fight for justice.